Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world today. My name's Paul Webb, I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and you are listening to Energy Speaks Back. Energy Speaks Back interviews energy experts from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to episode 17 of Energy Speaks Back. And I do hope you enjoyed our new music. Weekly, I present to you experts from around the world. And today we are back in the UK. Our subject today is Bitcoin and its involvement with the energy market. I am very intrigued as to where this podcast is actually going to go today. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver energy savings that impact on our planet. Today, I'm joined by a Bitcoin and a cryptocurrency expert who is the founder of Rowan Energy. Rowan Energy Blockchain is the world's first community-supported green energy blockchain. The expert has so much passion about this sector and a very good understanding on the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency sector. And I've been badgering him like mad ever since I've started these podcasts to get him on here as an interview. So, without any further ado, I give you David Duckworth. Good afternoon, David, and how are you today?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy morning already. Actually, it's been one of those days today already.
And how's your year started? You had a good start to the year?
Yeah, we've had an eventful start of the year actually. So in my industry, we've had some regulatory changes, so we've had to make sure that we comply. So there's been a lot of back and forth with lawyers and stuff. We've managed to kickstart the year in a good way. Like one of my New Year's resolutions is to do things a little bit more grown up for a business, running board meetings and, I'm having weekly catch ups with my team and stuff where, last year was just, especially towards the end, it was just so busy that you just you do it on the fly, grabbing information from here, there and sharing it. We've got WhatsApp group and just go tap, 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 just update everybody at the same time and then move on. So I'm kind of hoping that, this year would be a little bit more structured with it, but it's looking like it's going to be another year, which is just crazy. So
yeah, when it gets to David, I've known you for many years and brought a miner from you, a Bitcoin miner, which kept me up for many nights. Used all my electricity, and I think by the end of it, we made 0.3 of a Bitcoin, which was very good at the time. So David, if you can tell the audience a bit about yourself and about your background regarding Bitcoins.
Yeah, sure. So traditionally I'm from a technical background. I have for many years worked as a consultant advising financial and legal firms on their network and security infrastructure. Big names, Deutsche Bank, Aviva, Barclays Capital as well. There's been loads actually. So, and then in 2014, my father-in-law, for my pain, actually introduced me to Bitcoins, and just simply, I think he read it in the Daily Mail and said, have you ever heard of this criminal internet money? And I hadn't actually. And by the way, and ever since then, he's taken all credit for any success I've ever had because it was him that introduced me, right? And there have been bad times as well, and which he doesn't, you should have been more careful, kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
But off the back of that, I went and started to investigate. I did a bit of buying and trading, and then towards the end of 2014, I think it was. I forget the time now. I built an enterprise level Bitcoin mine in Cambridge in the UK. And at that time, it was a 26 terahash mine, which filled an entire room with miners. And it was really impressive. And it was all not completely, I would say 90% autonomous as well. So if servers need rebooting, it would recognize it, and it would restart itself and stuff. And it was awesome. But after we ran that for about 10 months. I think it was about 10 months. And then as we came towards the renewal of our lease, the landlord came along and went, look, you can't include your electricity next year in your lease. And it made the mine unprofitable. And there was a massive dip in the token. And so we sold that mine off. And I kind of walked away from the mining side, but it gave me a great basis in it. And from there, there've been several different projects I've kind of worked on. These are, kitchen table stuff, which, just because, I've been writing code for years, and I like writing code, and I built some trading algorithms to try and amplify maybe what if I could have a miner producing a certain amount of Bitcoin, could we then put it for an amplification process to make it worth more money towards the end of it? And turns out they're really hard to write. I wasn't very good at coding. And so, things like that, which then led to the formation of the business that I'm running now, which is Rowan Energy. So, so it kind of encompassed altogether several different passions that I have. One of them is, saving the world, saving the planet, and then crypto and blockchain as well. And it was originally devised in order to reward people for living a more sustainable life. That was where it was. And the idea originally was like to use the best of breed of kind of cryptocurrencies and kind of a reward system in order to reward people for recycling plastic bottles or running an electric car kind of thing. And it was incredibly hard to quantify. How would you reward somebody? How much would you reward someone for recycling a plastic bottle? Maybe someone recycles their sofa when they get a new one. And, how do you quantify it? And that was really, really hard kind of algorithm that we were working on. And, the tracking of it would have been, the infrastructure involved would have been worth more than the reward points themselves. And so it was harder for us to do that. Which then led, I suppose, to one of the key drivers, which was around the same time. This was in 2019. The government stopped the feed-in tariff, which was for people with rooftop solar and how much they could earn and stuff. And it had been diminishing over time anyway. So my parents, I don't know how it happened. My parents are like 190 years old, and somehow they got solar panels on the roof of their house. I think it was during the financial crash towards the end of it, they weren't earning anything on their savings. They thought solar panels is a better return on investment than that. And they were right, of course. But and they were right at the beginning of the feed-in tariff, 45 pence a kilowatt. They're still on that. They've still got another 11 years left or whatever. So they've done really well. Whereas my sister got in on it right at the end and is on pennies per kilowatt for the energy they produce. And in my head, in a time where everyone wants to move, make the transition to renewable energies, and if anyone we need to accelerate it, the initiative disappeared. And so, we were looking at energy companies that were offering a return on investment for a solar install of 20 years, and some of them more, 20, 30 years. And, that was longer than the kit was expecting to last, actually. So we thought it was madness. So we wanted to move away from trying to fix everything and just focus on one thing, and that was solar. And so we wanted to encourage the adoption of rooftop solar again. And that's kind of where we got to. And so that rewards people for the generation of solar. So this has got nothing to do with how much is fed on the grid. It's got nothing to do, it wouldn't like affecting any kind of feed-in tariffs. But what it does is we developed a smart miner. And that smart miner goes into people's homes, and it counts the amount of energy generated. We don't care if you use it locally. We don't care if it's fed into the grid. That doesn't make any difference. If it's being generated on your roof, it's not being produced by coal-fired power stations. And so we count that energy, the energy being produced, and then we reward the owner of the solar back in the form of Rowan reward points. The reward points themselves have a monetary value, actually, and so we're expecting, or although our pilot is just going live, and this is all going to be confirmed, but around 10 to 15 pence or something per kilowatt we'll be able to offer that's produced. We do a very clever thing with cryptocurrency, which allows us to offer those rewards to people. They can cash those rewards out, by the way. We've got a Rowan Rewards debit card that's coming out, and also we'll be able to cash out to via PayPal, for example, or there's also a donate button, so people that are in energy poverty, you can donate your energy directly to them, or it will go straight to the charity actually that's involved. Now there's an untapped market out there in the UK, which is so the carbon offset market is set to grow. In fact, actually, there was an article that came out today saying one of the countries, one of the Scandinavian countries, I think it was, we're looking at, they think they're just about $95 per ton of carbon for oil and gas companies produce. And they're expecting that to go to $250, $260 per ton. But there is no carbon offset taking place from the energy produced by rooftop solar. And the reason for that is that there's no way of counting it currently, and that's what we're bringing in. And so we are able to take the data from those rooftops production and generate our own renewable energy certificates that can be used. It's actually a hybrid certificate. So it's the equivalent of a UK ROC or international REC, or what they in the UK we call a REGO. So a ROC is for carbon offset. Each certificate is the equivalent of half a kilo, and we sell them to businesses in order to offset their carbon footprint, or individuals, businesses or individuals. And as we progress further into the Rowan Energy journey, it will be used as a REGO, which is the guarantee of origin of your energy. So that's where we are at the point right now. So we've got a pilot that's running. So we've put this now into, we've got our own smart mine. There's only 6 houses just to get the customer journey right. We want this to be, when you're dealing with the general public, and if I imagine once we think we've got it right, we'll hand one of these devices to my dad to say, here we go, set that up, and if he can do it, anyone can. And then we signed, we got the go ahead this morning for 180 properties in Peterborough, of whom all have already got solar installed, and we're already compatible with their hardware that's installed in that house, because we did our proof of concept with a meter reading company called Passive Systems, and they are a client of Passive Systems, which means that literally there'll be no COVID restrictions to getting this set up, because we'll basically be able to there'll be no physical access required into this. We'll be able to go directly via just the data they've already producing. So that's 180 houses.
Just want to take back a little bit. You're only interested in energy being delivered from the solar. You're not interested in the energy coming from the grid.
No. So we're only interested in the energy being generated by the solar. The reason for that is that if it's being produced by that solar panel, it's not being drawn from the grid, which is a mixture of all different types of energy. And, when we grow up as an energy company, that's really important for us. And we are building, I guess, we're calling, people call it, I think it's a virtual power plant, where we're going to have, tens of thousands of houses producing energy, which we'll be the customer of. And then that will be sold on to our consumer base. So that's the kind of long-term goal. I mean, as the business unfolds, we have several really big partners that have signed up with us in order to distribute our product for us. There's 2 solar companies, of which combined do 350 installs a month, but they've got a retrofit market of about 400,000 properties or something. And so if you have a look at that, the Rowan miner, the hardware, or the smart meter that is from Passive, the return on the investment for the infrastructure you have to contribute when you're buying it, it will be within 12 months, which compared to people going out spending £5,000 on a battery that will take 11 years to pay you back. It's I'm hopefully it's going to be a pretty good sell for them. But the end goal is that we get tens of thousands of these signed up as quickly as we can. We don't obviously want to grow too big because we'll trip over our own shoelaces, but with the aim that when we become then the energy company, we'll already have tens of thousands of clients on board, and you know, it's a reward system of which people won't want to leave or lose without signing up. So I think you know, we're at a really exciting point. We're literally you know, we've got national newspapers that are looking to write articles on us, and you know, there's a third company which is a renewable energy production company, that they're the kind of company that puts a single wind turbine on a farm in order to offset what they're using on that farm. So they've got bio generators, they've got solar, and they've got wind. And they were really important to join the pilot for us, because then it's a mixture of technologies as well, not just solar involved there as well. So they're on board, so which is awesome as well. So there'll be quite a lot of marketing will be involved in there. One of the guys who works for him is really a drone fanatic, and he's just going to do loads of like flying over the infrastructure and stuff for us. So that's really exciting. So, but I mean, anybody that is producing energy on site which is less than 50 kilowatts is our target. You know, if you've got a large solar farm, you're already entitled to you know, large government fed returns for your money, and it's kind of like what we're trying to avoid is, you know, that kind of centralized energy production. I mean, solar's awesome, but you know, when you're taking up you know, thousands of acres of farmland, for example, with solar panels, when there are, you know, 50 million houses in the UK without panels on the roof of their house, that would be a better place to put them all, I feel. You know, decentralizing the energy market so that people can buy their energy between each other, you know, solving problems along the way, such as 68% of Londoners only have on-street parking, don't have off-street parking. So owning an electric vehicle is really difficult. You have to use a public charge point or your works charge point. Whereas with our infrastructure, you'll be able to charge your car with your home generated solar wherever you are, because that peer-to-peer transaction happens between your home and your car, not so much another consumer. We did a survey on a bunch of people that own electric vehicles, and you know, one of their fears, which is really really awesome, is so you have this kind of like vehicle to grid infrastructure coming up, and although actually if you read it, it's very clever, and I'm not going to take away the guys that have developed that, you know, credit where credit is due, but the owner of the car was like, yeah, I'm really worried about running out of energy. What happens if it gets sold back to the grid, and then suddenly I've got to do a longer journey, and I've got to, and it's all valid points. But when you're able to track the energy coming off the grid and on the grid at any point within your infrastructure, you can do it at friends and family, for example. So if you and your kids all have solar, maybe you share energy between you, and there's no transaction for that. You know, it's just your energy comes off the grid here, and it goes off, you know, on the grid here, comes off, and then you can say that's transaction between those two.
And at the end of the day, you're doing a meter on both ends, aren't you?
Exactly.
You know exactly what you take off the system and what you put on it. Perfect.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are some clever stuff that people are doing in the industry. So, you know, there are quite major utility companies that have built infrastructure where the battery talks to the grid and it discharges onto the grid when the market conditions are right. And, you know, that's a pretty good platform. I was lucky enough to speak to the board and the technical team of one of the big utilities companies, of whom couldn't really comprehend what I was doing actually. But besides the point is that they've generated this product that bids on fractions of a penny depending on the market conditions of that energy being discharged, so it makes it more granulated. So if you are selling your energy with your neighbour, so Janet at number 90 has got a battery full of energy, and John at number 92 turns his kettle on, which pours a draw from the grid. If she then discharges on the grid as a result of him requesting the energy from the grid, that transaction can happen between those two, and that's a far higher monetary value going peer-to-peer on the prosumer level than it is sending it to the grid. And it's one of those ones which, sounds crazy when you first hear it. While obviously it's slightly different now because everyone's at home, but you're selling it to the grid for 5p, and then you come home at night when the sun's gone down and turn the kettle on and make your dinner, and you're buying it back for the same energy back from the grid for 20p, and you just think, oh, well, there's something not right there, and that's why the batteries have done so well. But I mean, I think the future in energy is actually people storing their energy in tokens, not batteries. So leave battery storage and all that to the grid, and they've been doing it for years. They're amazing, like balancing the grid that way. But if you produce energy, create a token, and then you can say, I produce this much energy, which is stored in the equivalent of these tokens, and then when I buy it back, I'll buy it back with those tokens that I've generated, and that allows you to buy and sell between two people for a very, very important value for starters, and it allows the utilities companies to earn a transaction fee between the two. So rather than making money from buying and selling energy, we earn the transaction between two parties buying and selling energy between them. And so that is where we're going.
What I wanted to pick up on, you've actually got a Bitcoin, if I can call it a Bitcoin or a crypto coin, called Rowan Energy now.
Yeah.
Where does that fit into this transaction?
So the Rowan, actually there's more than one actually within our infrastructure, and I don't mind sharing this. So the Rowan tokens, of which are on the public exchanges, are the same tokens that are the Rowan reward points that people get if you're a solar owner. They have less functionality as a crypto user would have. So they have like a pane of glass, but they can't send them between each other, or they can't sell their own tokens on an exchange. If you stole some money and converted it into Bitcoin, bought our token, transferred it to a Rowan solar owner, you could cash it out with a credit debit card, and then you're facilitating money laundering. And so we couldn't allow that functionality for those guys. So the Rowan token is part of that rewards platform, and it's a perfect use case for rewards. It's easy. The wallet platforms are already there, and it's easily transferred into an amount in pounds or dollars or whichever country you're launching this in. We've got another token which is a completely different architecture. So there's an Ethereum, which is another cryptocurrency. They've got a standard called an ERC-721 design, and we took that design and rebuilt the smart contract, and that allows us to produce tokenized renewable energy certificates, which is very important as well, because the immutable characteristic of a blockchain means that it can't be edited afterwards. So we can't there isn't any a point of fraud that can take place at that point there. But the beauty of the ER-721 is a lot more data can be held on them, but we've designed it so it can only be transferred once. So if you buy it to offset, you can't offset and then sell it to somebody else, and they can offset. It can only be transferred once. And it also does an application embedded in it which self-burns the token after 12 months. So you can only offset your carbon for that 12-month period. After that, the tokens is burnt, but the record of that token remains. There's also another very clever function within the blockchain, which allows us to comply with GDPR as well. So GDPR meter IDs. So on the chain, it stores the meter ID that the generation is taking place on, the grid reference. The energy is generated by what technology, so it's solar, wind, etc. It has the installer's initials to say that it was officially on that site and installed in a certain way. But that data is classed as personal information, of people's information, although there's no names and addresses or anything. It's still classed as people's personal data, and they are within rights, of course, could come to us and say, we want to have our data removed from your platform, which on a blockchain is quite difficult, because if we start removing data, the whole chain falls over.
Yeah.
And so we've done so what we've done actually is we have, and we're the first people to do this, I think, is we have encrypted that data, which means each individual token has its own private key. And if a person comes to us and says they want the data removed, we just delete the private key, which makes the data completely unreadable and usable that's on that chain. But it still means the chain stays up because all the data is encrypted on the chain. And so it gets around a lot of kind of energy blockchain kind of infrastructure. And we're quite lucky because we built our own blockchain for this as well. We didn't use a public chain. We did that at the beginning. We couldn't justify using a public chain of which, is maintained by millions of tons of carbon a year. We'd have to buy our own energy certificates to offset it. So we're able to pretty much, we've been able to move our blockchain in the direction that we want without a group consensus or updates to the network, of which would take, asking lots and lots of people permission in order to make an update to a chain. Because we own it, we're able to do that. It also means our blockchain is really powered. So all the validation steps, which are what makes a blockchain part of the infrastructure, are all run on the smart miners in people's homes, which are based on Raspberry Pis, which cost about £9 a year to run, and even less because they're sitting behind some solar, which makes it a really low powered and therefore low carbon chain as well.
With the, I was going to ask, how quickly, or is it up and running now? So if I had solar on my roof today, we could be facilitating a conversation to be able to transfer my solar power, being monitored it, measuring it, and transferring it into the roof. As of today.
So no is the answer. So we are in the middle of our live pilot. So we built a proof of concept last year, which allowed us to show that the technology works. And now we're in a pilot scheme. So I'm expecting the pilot to run probably for about another, let's say in the residential side, about 8 weeks. But we're expecting to be able to start pre-selling the miners towards the end of this month, I hope. So they'll be available to pre-sale at, a discounted price, get in early kind of ideas, in order for us to then launch, I'm hoping, at the end of February, where we'll be then ship them out, and the installers will come and install it into people's houses. The good thing about our own miners, which will be for retrofitting, so if you've already got solar, you can get one of these, is that they're non-intrusive, so you can add it to your system. You need to have a plug socket. You have a plug socket as well in order to allow the CT sensor, which is the bit that counts the energy, to have a steady current next to it, so it can validate it properly. And so you don't have to inform your energy company. You don't have to have to make surgery done in your house. It literally sits next to it, clips onto the wire. We've done some interesting stuff on the device itself, which stops the application of fraud. So, in theory, you could just take that clip off and put it on the inbound connection of your house, and it would count the energy coming in. But when the installer installs it, the certified installer installs it, he then runs the first reading, of which takes the sine wave, the inverter, and so every inverter has its own kind of like signal. And if that signal changes towards the end of it, it's either your inverter's breaking or you've moved it. And if that happens, then all the accounts freeze and there's nothing they can do with anything. And so that was had to put that in for fraud, which is an important part of as well, guarantee what's sitting behind the meter almost. So, but yeah. So right now, the answer is right now, you're going to start hearing about us a lot more, and the live pilot is out there. But so you're going to be the end of the month or beginning of February. There'll be available pre-sale, with the first shipping of them, I'm hoping, end of February, beginning of March.
And then where are you looking to take this long term? What's the game plan for the future? In UK,
we
take this globally.
Oh no. So this part, what I understand is the rewards part of it is only a very small part of what we're going to do. So we have already got the cogs in motion to get our utilities license, and we will. We're aiming to launch in the UK for starters, just to prove the business model, but a community-fed green energy company, which means you buy your energy from locally. So if you buy your energy from a big six, they greenwash it with certificates to say that it's green. But with our energy, you can go onto our dashboard and you can see in real time where your energy is being produced. And it's a house, it's a roof. It's on a Google Maps. It's like this roof here is producing your energy right now. And so that takes away the requirement for regos on the platform. And the exchange is actually happening between that prosumer and yourself. And actually what you're buying and selling are these rego certificates that we're producing. The end game is to bring out the next generation of energy companies, of which, it's far more transparent. It happens in real time rather than, data collected once a month and then accumulated and understood. And then the grid balance is in the background. I mean, we have to kind of retrofit what we're doing into the grid's infrastructure. And so we're going to take care of that bit. But the front end of it there is, owners of rooftop solar selling their energy directly to consumers directly, peer-to-peer. That's the end game. People selling energy from their rooftop directly to their electric car that's been plugged in on the other side of town. Or you have, like I was saying, friends and family. Maybe your kids have got electric vehicles and your energy just transfers to their electric vehicle or wherever they plug it in order to give them, it's like giving them fuel money. I mean, obviously, I know that we know this, but it may not be obvious to some people listening. We're not sending the eons down the cable over to the other side of town. In the UK, the grid is just one big pool of which people vomit energy into it. And so as long as we're tracking where it's going onto the grid and coming off the grid, and it's time stamped, which is important as well, we can match those up. The platform for the energy trading is interesting. So I mentioned to you at the beginning, I was building kind of trading bots that were originally for cryptocurrency. Well, we've been able to adapt that in order to build an energy exchange, of which then facilitates the sale of energy between prosumers and consumers. And it's all based on how much do you need, who's going to sell it to you, and who's the most local person to you possible, done by postcode or grid reference. And so you are truly buying green energy. I mean, and we're actually willing to accept that at some point, especially at the beginning, you might go on to that and go, that energy been produced by this, because there's not enough energy within our own infrastructure to supply everybody. But we're hoping, there'll be a pivot point where that will change. And plus, we've got plans. One of our directors has got strong links into commercial solar production. And so, when you work with us and when you've got farms producing excess energy using various different technology, at some point the pivot point will be there where we're running on our own infrastructure, where we got batteries to charge in when people require, the sun's up or the wind's blowing. There'll be points where we're definitely buoyant with our energy. And I'm hoping overproducing and being able to sell that back to the grid for other people to consume as well.
You mentioned business and the commercial element of this. Could we see businesses taking this on board?
Yes.
Where they've got roof space and they've got significant amount of solar that they could...
Absolutely. There's in Woodbridge in Suffolk, there's a business park of where they invested, and all of their factory roofs have got solar panels on them, and they're designated individual business units. And each one of them, only one of them actually, which is like an aircraft hangar, but has got more than 50 kilowatts in the roof. But we can easily facilitate that. I mean, especially when you've got a business park like that, where they can buy and sell between them on that business park for starters. Yeah. But that could be a real anchor point for allowing us to have enough energy to supply our consumers, but also, as an extra income for the businesses as well. We're looking at an average on our portfolio, especially. So we've done the market research on the one in Peterborough that we're doing the proof of concept for the pilot, and they over the course of a year they produce 20 kilowatts a day on average ish. So you can imagine the difference in the return for a factory roof with 10 times much on there, for example, and having a daily income of 10-15 pence per kilowatt on there. That's a big income for these guys. But it's definitely something we're interested in working with, especially. So there's I think it's the National Institute of Small and Medium Businesses, I think, are already talking to us to attract their members into this in order for not only to help offset their carbon, which is an important thing going forward for businesses, but also as an extra income for them for every kilowatt they produce. And remember, right at this second, we're only interested in what's produced, not what they use on site. So even if they're neutral in their carbon their electricity production, they can still earn any income on that energy, of which they're not earning now.
But David, look, this is an amazing story. Every time I speak to you, I start to understand it better, and I'm really getting a good understanding. I think what you've got here is really radical, and I think it's needed within this industry. So well done for sort of really keeping on to this, because I know you've been doing this for quite a few years, and focusing on and meeting the barriers, jumping over the barriers.
Yeah.
Pushing through the barriers, kicking the barriers out of the way. I know you do this all the time. So look, what can you give back to our audience today? What is there something that you could provide knowledge back to our industry?
Blockchain is a buzzword. There are, it's often described as the hammer looking for a nail. People say, well, I don't know how to use it. We've got to use blockchain somehow. Within energy, there are big conversations to do with certificates. There's big conversations to do with peer-to-peer energy trading. That's one of the holy grails of blockchain within the energy sector. But the key actually to all of this is, and we said it before, is tracking the energy coming onto the grid and off the grid at the same time in real time.
Yeah.
Once you've got that data set, you can imagine as the grid grows up, and they have recognised the infrastructure needs revamping, but I think they've got like a £14 billion budget or something in order to do so. If I can tell you where money is going off the grid in the same time, there's a possibility that I have a case to say that I'm only going to pay for the infrastructure between those 2 points. And so, and that raises the question to the grid owners, like, justifying infrastructure costs for an entire grid when you know the parts you use. So if you're buying and selling energy between your street, why are you paying for expensive long power cables to, for example? I'm no way saying that we shouldn't be paying for all this, by the way. I'm saying I want to see it quantified in a way that makes it possible. There have been several businesses in the past that have attempted to do that. And they call it virtual private wire, I think. So, but the grid has no available tools to track the energy coming on and off the grid, especially from smaller generation points. And once you have, a substantial amount of customers on board that you're doing this for, I mean, Ofgem are really interested in how much energy are people using locally in their property compared to what generate their roofs, and no one can tell them that question. And we're going to them saying, actually we can. And also, if you imagine, if you were a landlord of a property and you were able to sell the energy produced from your roof to your tenants at a discounted rate, a virtual energy provider, and then anything else that comes up, you could facilitate the sale of that as well. At the moment, there's no way of doing that, but our infrastructure allows you to do that, because we know how much is generated on a roof, how much is used locally, we know how much is in a battery, and we know how much goes onto the grid. And with all that information together, it allows you to potentially give a landlord a higher return on investment. It's like adding an extra room to the property, an income stream for, and I mean, as much as they are villainized in the world, are they have a really, really slim budget line, of which, between the cost of having that property and the finance involved and the maintenance and etc., compared to what they can charge on rent. If you put solar panels in there and produce an income from selling energy to that person, as I said, it's like putting an extra room in there, or an extra tenant maybe in a house.
Yeah.
So yeah, the key to the energy infrastructure is the industry growing up technically and moving away from being an old boys club where it's all done on handshakes in cigar rooms. I'm making that up, it's probably true. And moving towards like a quantified it's a good, champagne at a shareholders' Christmas party and stuff. But and having a quantified, trackable system of where we know exactly where they come from. There's no greenwashing. There's no certificates involved. It's in real time. You can tell in real time where the energy is coming from. If you consider some of the larger businesses, Amazon as an extreme, when they have purchase agreements with solar farms, for example, to produce their energy, and it's really important that they are low carbon businesses. To them, it's like a key part of what they do. Our infrastructure will be able to tell them exactly which wind turbine is producing their energy at any time, because we have that facility to track the energy coming onto the grid and coming off the grid. And that, I believe, is the future of energy.
That is an amazing story. But David, I wish you every success for this.
Thank you.
And I know, the passion you speak about this product and what you're doing. I'm very excited for you, and I'm looking forward to following your story. Thank you for coming along today.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me. Cheers, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And thank you for my special guest. If you want to know more about saving your third largest expense, please go to our website on www.b2benergy.co.uk. That just leaves me one more thing to say. Be safe.